Welcome to Before Words. In this video, you'll understand why some babies rarely cry, stay unusually quiet, and what that may actually reveal about their brain and nervous system. And if this sounds like your baby, you can't miss this video. Because once you understand what's really happening behind that silence, the way you respond to your child changes completely. Some babies cry over everything, but others barely cry at all. They stay quiet for hours. They seem easy, too calm, as if they almost never need anything. And at first, that sounds perfect. People say, "Your baby is so calm. You got lucky. I wish mine was like that." But over time, a silent question starts to appear. Why is my baby this quiet? Why do they react so little? Is this really calmness or something else? Because deep down, it doesn't feel like personality alone. It feels different. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. A very quiet baby does not always mean a fully regulated baby. Sometimes, silence can hide things parents simply can't see from the outside. Most explanations stop at the surface. People say the baby is just easygoing, that some babies naturally cry less, or that they're simply more independent. But that doesn't explain everything. Because a baby's brain was biologically designed to signal needs, discomfort, and the need for connection. Crying is not a small detail. It's a survival tool. So when a baby seems unusually quiet, the question changes completely. It's no longer just, "Why is my baby so calm?" It becomes, "What is the nervous system doing to reduce those signals so much?" Research in infant development and early attachment, including studies discussed by institutions like Harvard University and Yale University, shows that babies do not stop signaling needs without a reason. Sometimes it may be related to regulation, but in other cases, it may be a brain trying to adapt to overstimulation, stress, or emotional disconnection. And that completely changes the way you see that quiet little baby. To really understand this, you need to notice something most people never think about. Babies are not born knowing how to regulate their emotional state, and that changes everything. Because in the first years of life, a baby's brain depends heavily on the environment to stay organized. When a baby feels discomfort, fear, overstimulation, or a need for connection, the nervous system tries to signal it. Through crying, through movement, through seeking contact. But here's the important part. When the brain begins to perceive that signaling does not consistently change the environment, it may start reducing those signals, not because the need disappeared, but because the nervous system is trying to adapt. Research in neurodevelopment and attachment shows that, in some cases, babies exposed to high levels of stress, overstimulation, or low emotional responsiveness may begin showing reduced external signaling. In other words, silence does not always mean calmness. Sometimes it means the brain has started conserving emotional energy. And that's exactly why some babies seem too quiet. Because on the outside, there are fewer signals. But internally, the nervous system may still be trying to handle far more than it appears. And when you look at this from a deeper perspective, everything starts to make sense. Because the human brain evolved through connection. For thousands of years, a baby depended completely on another human being's emotional response in order to stay safe. Crying created proximity. Contact created protection. Responsive care created regulation. Connection meant survival. But the infant brain also has another incredibly powerful mechanism: adaptation. When the nervous system perceives the environment as too intense, too unpredictable, or emotionally inconsistent, it tries to protect itself in the only way it can, by reducing reactions, reducing signaling, reducing outward expression. And that's why sometimes a very quiet baby can appear mature on the outside, when biologically something much more complex may be happening. Because the brain did not necessarily learn to become calm. It may have learned to become silent, and that completely changes the way you see that behavior. Because a baby who barely cries is not always a baby who needs less. Sometimes they're simply showing fewer signs of what they're feeling internally. And this is where the hardest part to notice begins. Because behind that quiet baby, there may be a brain trying to handle things alone that it still cannot organize internally. On one side, the body still needs connection, comfort, emotional regulation. But on the other, the nervous system may have started reducing outward signals as a form of adaptation, and something silent, yet profound, begins to happen. The baby feels, but reacts less, needs, but shows less. And this can create one of the most dangerous misunderstandings in early childhood, assuming that less crying means fewer emotional needs. Because that baby who seems to never bother anyone may not have learned how to stay calm. They may simply be trying not to overwhelm an already exhausted nervous system. And that's exactly why many parents feel deep down that something is hard to explain. Because excessive silence in a baby does not always feel peaceful. Sometimes it feels distant, as if there were an invisible barrier between what the baby feels and what they're able to express. And once you understand that, the behavior takes on a completely different meaning. Because maybe your baby is not quiet because they don't need you. Maybe they're simply learning to ask in a way almost nobody notices. When you start seeing it this way, that baby who once seemed too calm takes on a completely different meaning. It's not emotional coldness, it's not independence, and it's definitely not easy. It's a brain trying to adapt the only way it knows how. And if that could be translated, it might sound something like this. I still feel things. I still need connection. I just can't show it the way you expect. I'm not distant. I'm trying to organize myself in silence. And that changes everything, because this is not about a baby who doesn't need much. It's about a developing nervous system trying to find safety within its environment. And that silence that once looked like simple calmness starts revealing something much deeper. A brain learning, from the very beginning, how to respond to the world around it, long before words are ever possible. Now, there's one detail many parents never connect. Some babies who seem extremely quiet, who rarely cry, and show fewer emotional reactions, also start developing very repetitive behaviors, like throwing objects on the floor over and over again, watching the same reaction, repeating the exact same movement nonstop. And that creates a silent question. Why does my baby keep doing this? Is it just play, or does it mean something deeper? Because underneath it all, those behaviors may actually be connected. Both come from a brain trying to create predictability, safety, and internal organization. And once you understand that, a lot of behaviors that once seemed random suddenly start making sense at the same time. If this kind of content helps you understand your child differently, subscribe to the channel. Because here, you don't just learn about child behavior, you learn what's really happening inside your baby's brain. And that completely changes the way you see every reaction. Now, if you want to understand why some babies throw objects on the floor repeatedly, click the video on your screen. You'll finally see what the brain is actually trying to learn through that behavior, and why it's far deeper than it seems. See you there.